All right, I would say let's start because we have a dense program and only 1.5 hours. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Irene Lucius. I'm the Regional Conservation Director of WWF Central and Eastern Europe, and I have the pleasure of being the moderator of this webinar today called Green Carpathians. This is a webinar on transnational cooperations to address the biggest threats to the biodiversity of the Carpathian Mountains. And it takes place in the framework of the EU Green Week and is one of the partner events of this EU Green Week, which this year focuses on biodiversity, in particular the value of biodiversity to society and the economy. So a very fitting frame for talking about the Carpathians and its incredible biodiversity and how we can work together to conserve it. As mentioned, we have a dense program and 5 speakers, and we would also like to have a bit of time left in the end for questions and answers. And this is why we would kindly ask you to write your questions into the chat box as we go. And we will then collect the questions and save them for this final session. And you can put your questions into the chat box, which you can open. If you go with your cursor to the bottom of the screen, there you find a menu. And one of the icons is the chat box. So you open it and you can plug in your questions and comments there. In addition, it would really help us if you also raised your virtual hand. And you can find your virtual hand if you go to the list of participants. Also, this list of participants can be found at the bottom of your screen in this menu down there. So let's start. And I have the pleasure of introducing the first speaker. This is Mr. Harald Igera. He's the head of the UN Environment Vienna office and also acts as secretary of the Carpathian Convention. Harald studied international relations and environmental law and sciences, then worked as a journalist for some years before joining the United Nations Environment Office. And since then has been promoting cooperation of the Carpathian countries and was also instrumental in getting the convention signed, the Framework Convention on the Protection and Sustainable Development of the Carpathians. And in addition, Harald also represents the UN Environment as an environmental focal point to the International Mountain Partnership. Harald, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I will have a presentation for you on the Carpathians as a hub for biodiversity. I'm trying to share my screen. I hope it worked. So I will now take you to an excursion to the beautiful Carpathian Mountains and a little bit about the threats to their biodiversity and also the opportunities of cooperation. I would like to thank all the co-organizers, the United Nations Environment Programme that I represent, the European Academy, CWEB, European Wilderness Society, but also the WWF International, a long-term partner of all our efforts, and really special appreciations to the European Commission and to the European Green Week that we can present this region that is so dear to our hearts and our efforts to a European audience. So let us put the Danube Carpathian region on our mind map and on the map. What are we talking about? Let me just briefly introduce. It's a great area in the EU. It's inhabited by millions of people. It's also an eco-region that is recognized by the conservation community as a hotspot of biodiversity of global importance, characterized by its forests, its rivers and wetlands, its flora and fauna, from the large carnivores to some very rare fish species. You can see here the map of the Danube Carpathian region. Here this would be, let's say, the bordering Italy, Adriatic Sea. Here you have the Alps, and then here you have the Carbasian mountains, all the way to down to the Black Sea, and here you would have the Western Balkans countries. And green means connectivity and green infrastructure. You see how important it is for Europe. In this region are the Carpathian Mountains as the second, let's say, big mountain range of Europe besides the Alps. Again, a paradise of protected areas, of virgin forests, many endemic plants, big animals, and to emphasize really Central Europe's last wilderness areas. But the Carpathian ecosystems are not only there for themselves, they are very important for the water cycle of Europe, for the prevention of hazards, and as an ecological backbone of the continent. Now here you can see the Carpathian Mountains in the Danube Carpathian area. You can see this arc are the Carpathians, so they are largely in the Danube area, but they also are, so the Vistula and the Dniester are also part, in this part up here with Poland and Ukraine, are also part of the Baltic Sea and of the Black Sea basins as such. So they're stretching a little bit over the Danube region. I give you some impressions, what we are talking about. For those who don't know it, many know it. This is the high Tatras, I think seen from the Slovak side. So high mountain ecosystems. This is a beautiful photo from Romania. I think this is the Piatra Craiului National Park in Romania. Some inhabitants of the Carpathians, well-known ones, Canis lupus or Ursus actos, or I think we missed the links now. Of course, this beautiful ecosystem and ecoregion is exposed to threats due to developments. We are scientists reporting in particular the pressure on the land usage. Then maybe to emphasize, as said, Carpathians are the largest, pretty unfragmented, great region of Europe in ecological terms. So the increasing fragmentation that is threatening that, loss of biodiversity, pressures from different sectors such as tourism, but also poaching, pollution, climate change, global change, intense agriculture, and so on. The challenges are now to bring development and conservation and protection together to provide a living space for millions of people without endangering sustainability, and maybe to use it also as an opportunity in now this strange new world that we are experiencing in the course of the global pandemic, by appreciating the natural ecosystems as a big factor of resilience against this kind of global pandemics and diseases. There is a policy framework in place for the Carpathian region, which is called the Carpathian Convention, that I also represent here, but that is in fact a big movement of many actors working together. It started with an international treaty that is now almost 20 years old or young. And I don't go into detail here. We have a secretariat that is located in Vienna, in the Vienna International Center, provided by the United Nations Environment Program. And we have 7 countries of Central and Eastern Europe participating very actively in our efforts. We have an institutional machinery that fits the different sectors that are relevant for sustainable development in a region. So it's not only about biodiversity, but going into different sectors. And on each of them, we have working groups working together. Again, we don't have time to go into detail, just to tell you, for example, we work on biodiversity. We prepare some strategies paperwork, but based on that, we are promoting very concrete actions. One of them, for example, you will hear more about it, is the Carbasian network of protected areas. It's a large carnivore action plan. It is the Carbasian wetland initiative, and also working on information system improvements, the Carbasian International Biodiversity Information System. We are working on cultural heritage. That is an important capital of the region. And we are about to start up a very interesting project on bringing cultural heritage and tourism together. These are impressions from Poland. Very important is forest management. Again, we started from the convention, going over protocols and action plans, but we are now establishing, in cooperation with the European Environment Agency, the inventory of virgin forests of the Carpathians, something very important, but also working on close to nature forestry and natural forests in general. For sustainable tourism, that's an opportunity for the region. We have established sustainable tourism centers now that are actively cooperating in Romania, Poland, and Ukraine, that together form our Carpathian Sustainable Tourism Platform. So, sustainable transport, again, very important sector. Starting from the convention over a transport protocol to a strategic transport action plan, and you will hear about that in the course of the seminar, how to bring mobility and ecology together, and what are the flagship projects and activities in the Carpathian region. Agriculture, similar picture, let me not go into detail. We are at the beginning of our agriculture work. And also something very important is climate change, where we have now initiated a roadmap to address climate change. We are actively working in this field with the other mountain regions of Europe, very strong cooperation with the Alps and the Alpine Convention, and also with other mountain regions all over the world, because mountains are so impacted by climate change. Adaptation needs are big, but also chances for mitigation. But again, mitigation brings some new pressures on the mountains as well. I want to go now to the policy mainstreaming very quickly again, just to give the context. We are acting in a global field with the Convention on Biological Diversity, the post-2020 discussions now. Where do we want to go with biodiversity worldwide? What are the targets? We're about to start the United Nations Decade for Ecosystem Restoration that should bring some opportunities for our region. But of course, also very important, the European context, because 5 out of our 7 countries are in the EU. The 2 others are either neighborhood or accession countries. The European Green Deal, European Biodiversity Strategy, and Farm to Fork Strategy that will hopefully positively impact the region. From the global side, we just launched as UNEP the Global Biodiversity Outlook, the 5th edition. How are we going to get to realize the 2050 vision for biodiversity. In 30 years from now, we should be living in harmony with nature worldwide. But for the moment, globally, the biodiversity is still declining at an unprecedented rate, and the decline is still accelerating. We have not met, as the global community, the targets to conserve and use biodiversity in a reasonable manner. Again, also in these times, we see now that we are reaching the limits of nature.
1 minute left, Harald.
Okay, so I'm almost there. The importance of mainstreaming is shown that it cannot be done by one sector alone. This is conservation. Many things need to come together in order to bend the curve. We are working in the EU with the Danube strategy, with all the different fields to achieve this mainstreaming. And we are in the Carpathian Convention also actively cooperating with the EU in all its dimensions. And there will be a very important event next year to discuss this interactions, how we fit into these policies, how we can be mainstream, and hopefully leading to accession of the European Union to Carpathian Convention also one day. How does all this translate into practice? And that's also my second last slide. We also, these ideas of mainstreaming, we want to put them into practice, and we do so. We are cooperating with all the, let's say, big EU programs, the Southeast program, the different Interreg programs, Danube, Central Europe, Horizon 2020, LIFE, and also the EEA grants with Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. We have a number of projects that you will see today that have been put together in the frame of the Carpathian cooperation that you will see now in the different programs. Many of them dealing now with transport, ecological connectivity, but also with the very, very important topic of wildlife crime and preventing illegal activities. So in this respect, I wish you all a very successful and interesting session, and I hope we all are going to learn a lot about how to address efficiently, effectively the threats that this outstanding and beautiful ecoregion is meeting. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will now try to unshare my screen and hand back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Harald. Yeah, as you just heard, we are now going to listen to 4 different speakers giving us insights into either closed or ongoing projects that all happen in the framework or related to the Carpathian Convention. And the first in the row is Dr. Gabriela Maria Nash. She will give an introduction to the ConnectGREEN project. Gabriela is a landscape architect and environmental protection specialist with a PhD in forestry and landscape management and master's degrees in landscape architecture and forest pedagogy. She has been involved in over 200 projects on open air design all over Hungary, and before that also worked as a researcher, and is now working for is coordinator of the project ConnectGREEN, and representing CWEP. So over to you, Gabriela, for an overview of what's happening on ConnectGREEN. We cannot hear you. Gabriela? You have to unmute yourself, I'm afraid.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. So can you see my shared screen? Or shall I share it again?
we can see it, but please put it in presentation mode and move to the first slide. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. So probably we are over the technical problems. So with Ms. Hildegard Meyer from WWF CE, we will present together a 3 project-long process. Actually, the first one, what I will present is the ConnectGREEN project. The previews of this project was the TransGREEN, and the follow project will be the SafeGREEN project. The 3 of them both will take care of the problem area of the ecological connectivity and the transportation sector. Why are they so important for us and for the Carpathians? First of all, because the Carpathians, as Mr. Harald Igera has already mentioned, a well-developing point of right now. So we have to be very careful how we will develop our assets, our built environment, and what will be the impact of such a development on the nature, and how will the citizens benefit from the development and from the protection of the natural assets. So the main point, harmonization of this development. Within the first project I'm presenting, we are actually aiming much rather the natural assets protection and its embedding into the strategic planning processes in order to harmonize all the cooperations within the national and the international strategic planning processes on territorial level. The main threats of such a development, first of all, the development itself. So when we are developing any infrastructure, building any new environment into our natural area, of course, the infrastructure will need space. The most problem in this continent, but actually we don't have that much space what we would need, what we would require for developing all our wishes. This creates a fragmentation of habitats, which are cutting one core area from another, and of course creating a genetic fragmentation from the nature. All of that for the citizens means that they are losing the ecosystem services, which we are all building on our lives. This all creates a decreasing of biodiversity, which of course means a very unstable future for even humankind. And this all, of course, driven by climate change, but we just guess how will act on us and what will be the new stabilized state nature of our climate, of our environment. And there is a very important threat from the citizens that actually we are lack of cooperation, and this means probably one of the greatest threats of the region. So if we look at a little bit closer to the gray infrastructure of the world, all these orange spreading nets are actually built environments. They are incredibly increasing. If we look closer to Europe and to our region, it's obvious that the infrastructure is already fragmenting the natural environment unbelievably. So if we look at a little bit closer, what is the plan for the Trans-European Network for Transportation? We have to admit that actually the threat of fragmentation is not a future. This is the reality. If we are putting this gray infrastructure on the level of the green infrastructure and evaluating the actual value of them, we have to admit that Europe in a very bad condition. If you are looking into this map, you can see that over here are the Carpathians, still quite in a good state of nature. But when we are talking about threats, we have to mention opportunities as well. So first of all, we still have incredible existing natural assets, and we have the great willingness to protect them as much as we can. We have incredible long-lasting processes for how to develop our countries, our regions, our continent. In the meantime, they have to be cooperated together. And of course, we have very new and ambitious EU policies, what we must join. So what the project itself done? First of all, elaborated a methodology, how to monitor and collect data on the field for ecological corridors. Then all this data, they embodied to a habitat suitability model and to the CCBIS platform, which is a knowledge sharing platform of the Carpathian Convention. And all of this data was embodied to ongoing processes, such as into the national spatial planning processes and the international strategic cooperation. And in the meantime, all of this knowledge are embedded into the sectoral communications by meetings, training, and strategies. So the methodology itself indicated what are the ecological corridors. We try to identify them by 3 umbrella species, the main big carnivores of the region. And of course, after then, we try to make it obvious in pilot areas. We have 4 pilot areas. Each of them are very much tainted by the infrastructure development. So all of this data were embedded into the habitat suitability model. What is that? Actually, if you look at into the map of the Carpathian Mountains, you have to see that all of these green covered small pots are protected, but all of them are fragmented from each other. What does it mean for species such as the big carnivores? That they have to reach some corridors for the natural migration processes. So when we are checking the actual core areas and the corridors, we have to see that there are very small patches of core areas and thin corridors between each other. So this way, we finalized, if you put it on actually a real mapping of all the habitats are evaluated, you have to see that the fragmentations are real between the core areas. There are a lot of infrastructural and land use changes. So we all put this together and made a habitat suitability model, which will embed first of all to the CCBIS platform, as I have mentioned. This platform contains a lot of knowledge so far, informations, publications, and first of all, a data set on map design. The main aim of this platform to provide an international platform for the data sets and actually have the access for spatial planners, for strategic planners to have data for their work from all of the countries. I have to mention that the main problem with spatial planning, that actually over the processes, we don't have time to make real deep data collections. So we have to have already, when the strategic plannings, the cooperation between the sectors, cooperation between the citizens are made and designed. So we have to, thank you. Okay, then I will be faster. So the main point with spatial planning to have already the data. Then you are starting to set the actual space, what will be used for, and how will the land use change. So this is the main aim of the CCBIS platform. If we are looking closer, you can see that actually this is a very fragmented area, incredibly. So when we are actually setting such a habitat suitable meeting model, we have to set the core areas and the corridors. You can see this very closely from the Czech Republic, as I have mentioned. In this mapping, we identify critical zones where mitigation measures must be done. Of course, with these mitigation measures, we are providing opportunities for the spatial planning to take care and considerize the problem areas and set actual on-the-spot solutions for the cooperation of sectors. And of course, last but not least, we have to support the intersectoral communication. For this, we made meetings, field trips, trainings for different kind of people. We set a strategy for the Carpathian Convention, or at least we have started to support it, to have finally an identification, conservation, and restoration, and management of ecological corridors in the regions. We set a transferability strategy. How can we spread this knowledge, this information within the countries, within the continent, and even forward if we can. And of course, we finalize with a lot of information sharing events. We hopefully could spread how important the cooperation between the sectors to set a stabilized future for ourselves. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Gabriela, for this enlightening presentation and sticking to the time. A reminder to everybody, we are collecting questions to the presentations in the chat box. If you have not used Zoom before, you can find the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Then let me introduce you to the next speaker. This is Isidoro De Bortoli, who is a researcher and project manager at the Interreg Research Institute for Regional Development in Italy. He is a lawyer by education, but also holds a master's degree in World Heritage Management and also in planning. And in addition, he is also a recognized mediator in civil and commercial matters. Isidoro will give us an overview over the project Centralparks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Irene. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present Centralpark project. We stepped out from the Danube program area to jump in the Interreg Central Europe program area. I'm not going to present results since we are in the middle of our path within this project. This is a short overview regarding what I'm going to speak about. I think that people are important, persons are important, and so it's a pleasure for me to present our partnership. We are working in the middle of the Europe, really close to the Carpathian. Carpathian are the core of this project. Yeah, of course, we are leading this project from Italy, and we are really proud of it, and of course honored. The reason behind is that we have a strong and long cooperation with the Secretariat of the Capacitance Convention, but also with several partners and stakeholders living and working within Carpathians. Our really hope, and let me say our really challenge, is also trying to bridge the Carpathian to the Alps, because I honestly think that several traits and also several points in touch are really common between the two mountain areas. This is our associated partners. Our program area, unfortunately, does not permit to include also Ukrainian and Serbian partners. We are a little bit lucky because, as you can see, we have been able to involve also Ukraine thanks to the availability of the Ministry of Ecology within the project. We are in touch with these external partners because we strongly believe that it's really, really important to share our work with them. We will try to share also our final results and keep their approval for the final commitment. Okay, what Carpathians are for us has been already well explained by Harald through his presentation. So I'm not going to spend more words about it. I would like to stop of the increasing threats from a Centralparks overview. In bold, you can see the main threats are motivating us to face these problems within the Carpathian. Threats to the Carpathian ecoregion, especially in terms of infrastructure and transport, as Gabriela already said, but also illegal and unsustainable logging, intensification of agriculture and habitat degradation, but also seen to fragmentation, have a really an unprecedented potential to exacerbate biodiversity loss. We are facing biodiversity loss through different activities within the project. So these are just some few threats we are considering really, really important for our perspective working in this important project. I already mentioned some really, really concrete threats, and I think that some threats are really, really well known, and especially among our stakeholders and especially among the experts are working with us. I would like just to underline, because we had some experience working together with UNEP and also WWF, the problem of the Carpathian forest. They are being cleared at an alarming rate. Of course, in order to get a short-term gain from the forest, exacerbated by these ongoing processes of land restitution, and also the case of many forest owners or illegal loggers that are reducing the quantity and the quality, especially of the forests in the Carpathian, should be addressed within several projects, not just through our project. Illegal logging during past years has become of a profitable business, and I think it's quite common in the Carpathian, partly due to very poor forest governance system sometimes. What are our objectives? Let me say that our project purpose came from not these direct threats as illegal logging or as some different problems, but mainly from indirect threats, because we need also to face indirect threats. The root cases of these indirect threats to Carpathian ecoregion, I think, are mainly related to socio-economic change in the region. So this is our main objectives: try to improve and integrate environmental management capacities, working together and close to protected areas managers, but also local institutions and local people, local communities. We have a problem with the preparatory rural development. Some regions contain one of the biggest areas of high diverse semi-natural habitat with a high natural value farming system, probably the highest in Europe. And these systems sometimes is clearly associated with more traditional and less intensive form of production. We need as objective also to promote sustainable economic practices that are threatened by abandonment in the highlands and of course also intensification in the lowlands. So this is our target groups. Who are we speaking to during our project? Who are the main target? As you can see, of course, protected area managers and administrators are the main targets of this project. But we are focusing also on local public authorities, and I think that our associated partners are demonstrating the importance of this project. We are including also NGOs, nature conservation authorities, of course, and the education that, as I am going to say, is really important profile of our perspective. These, in really brief, our project outputs. We foresee an theoretical part really important to make this project closer to our main targets. A technical part made basically from specific tools we are trying to develop, and also a different part that aim at implementing some specific tools addressed to managers, institutions, try to decline these meanings also to local communities. These sustainable economic practices are, of course, really important for us. This is the first work package led by our Polish partners, and it's coming to its first results at the beginning of the next years. Okay, this is another really important part regarding the needs of developing specific and technical tools. We are trying to design some guidelines to integrate network conservation planning into existing planning, try to update what exists right now with some different and important existing panels and also protocols. In this part, we also think that the loss of this kind of cultural links and traditional knowledge has also been significant within the project areas. This is another part, an ecosystem toolkit developed by our Slovak partners, really, really important to train our main stakeholders. We have several challenges, and we all think that these challenges are really, really important. The traditional knowledge is significant for a basic reason that we really hope to stay close to these local communities. We are completely aware that political barriers and institutional blockages will have to be removed to be ensured that Carpathians, also thanks to Centralparks, will fulfill its role as a model region for international collaboration and also capacity building. These are just other challenges we are trying to develop within the project. Education is really, really important. And to promote education, we are also trying to reactivate, to give new life to an important network, the CMPA network. This is our challenge. And we are trying to merge our efforts with the other projects, lead partners. Some speakers are here present, and we are working together to create a new collaboration with this really, really important network. The first thing that strikes me about education is knowledge gain mainly. Knowledge is really important. Education with this project gives us a knowledge of the world around us, and especially of the Carpathians problems around us. And it could change into something better, I think. Education is really, really important. And to promote networking also through the role of Centralparks could be really, really crucial. It develops, I think, a perspective of looking at a new life. It helps us to build opinions and points of view that we can share each other. People debate over the subjects of whether education is the only thing that gives knowledge. Some say education is the process of gaining information. Probably they are right. But then again, I think that information cannot be converted into knowledge without education. For this reason, I strongly believe that trying to educate will not pretend to teach anything is the really key of this project. Thanks to theoretical documents, theoretical parts, technical tools, because technology is really important in each part of our life, and also thanks to communication, that's also really, really important to spread our result and also to understand if we are on the right side of our path along the Carpathian life. I really thank you for your attention. Before Irene shoot me, I think to respect the timeline.
Excellent. Yes. Many thanks for that, and also for the good presentation, Isidoro. Just to recall, if you have questions to him or to the previous speakers, please put them in the chat box. Then we can go on to the next presentation by my colleague Hildegard Meyer. So she's also working for WWF Central and Eastern Europe. She is an ecologist by training and has been involved in numerous projects, many of them in the context of the Carpathian Convention, for example, the Carpathian Ecoregion Initiative. but also, for example, sustainable tourism. And over the past years, Hildegard has discovered her passion for ecological connectivity and wildlife, and has been managing projects on that topic. So she will give an overview over 2 projects. One is TransGREEN, and the other one is the new project, Safe Green. Hildegard, please. And we cannot hear you yet.
Hello, hello everybody. I think now you can hear me. I forgot to unmute. I'm sorry. Today it's a pleasure for me to introduce you to these 2 projects that were already discussed or introduced, addressing the threat of increasing traffic and road and rail infrastructure in the Danube Basin with a focus on the Carpathians. One project, which is TransGREEN, was closed a year ago. We are currently also busy with the ConnectGREEN project that was presented by Gabriela earlier in this session. And the new project, the Safe Green project that has just started, I will also present in my presentation. So both projects deal with the ecological corridors that are interrupted by grey infrastructure. TransGREEN looked on the issues directly related to the grey infrastructure, like permeability of these linear transportation infrastructures, and Safe Green looks beyond to the bottleneck areas of such infrastructure crossings, as the vicinity of crossing structures has to be created in a way that wildlife is attracted to them to cross here. We are addressing the threats, but there are also benefits, of course, while having an economic increased or economic boost. There are also benefits. So as you have heard in the other presentations already, we are dealing with the landscape fragmentation, and with it along the linear transport infrastructure, land use is being changed, not in favor for ecological corridors or for wildlife. It also causes wildlife barriers, and if you look at transport traffic safety, in some cases there are accidents caused that can be very dangerous for people. The benefits are clear. We have a boost of the rural development. We have better access to education and health centers and to markets. The challenges, why ecological connectivity is important. I think it also Gabriela addressed it already, but I maybe shortly recall this. So ecological connectivity is the home of biodiversity. It allows movement of animals for mating and food and shelter. And what is most important is that ecological connectivity helps for the resilience and stability of the ecosystems related to natural fluctuations, but also to our common topic, which is climate change. And it also provides ecosystem services we all depend on. And from this we can derive that nature needs space. So all in spatial planning, everything has to be very carefully planned to keep room and space for nature. The challenges we are facing directly related to the transport infrastructure development in the region is to balance people's needs for safer and better infrastructure while conserving nature, and also to make authorities and people understand the importance of safeguarding ecological connectivity for healthy livelihoods. I just mentioned it for the ecosystem service we all depend on. Then we experienced a lack of experience of authorities and engineers in proper planning procedures, as well as a lack of accessible, scientifically sound biodiversity data. These data are important to really be able to decide on to make good decisions. And in addition, we have a low performance of environmental law implementation. So the laws are mainly there, but the implementation is very weak. I will start with the, sorry. I will start with the TransGREEN project that has been closed, that was closed a year ago. The title of this already says what it was about. So it's the integrated transport and green infrastructure planning in the Danube Carpathian region for the benefit of people and nature. Within this project, we try to bridge different stakeholders and different sectors, as well as to bridge transportation infrastructure and ecological corridors. This is TransGREEN in a nutshell. You see who was on the project as project partners. We had NGOs, we had public authorities, we had the science sector with us and the transport sector. And we had 9 associated strategic partners from Austria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Romania, Slovenia, and Ukraine. We were mainly working in the Carpathians. And the project aimed at contributing to an environmentally friendly and safer road and rail network in the Carpathians. And we try to integrate green infrastructure and elements into the TEN-T related transport infrastructure. TEN-T was also explained earlier. This is the Trans-European Network of Transportation, a plan that gives us that gives a picture of where and how to build new infrastructure to have good connections within the European Union, but also beyond. And we try to integrate these green infrastructure elements at the local, national, and transnational level, and also across the sectors. Where were we working? Here you see the map of the Danube transnational region, actually, of the EU-SDR region. We had 2 cross-border pilot areas between the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and the second one between Slovakia, Ukraine, and Hungary. And we had 2 additional project areas in Romania. The objectives, so how, where to cooperate, to foster the cooperation among relevant partners from the transport, spatial planning and environmental sector, and to increase scientific knowledge for a good sound decision making. And very concrete, we were working on the minimization of conflicts between transport planning and green infrastructure objectives in the pilot areas. The TransGREEN achievements, I mean, first of all, I have to say the collaboration has improved across the countries and across the countries and across the sectors. We could involve more than 460 organizations that were involved in the development of our outputs. As you can see here, the wildlife and Carpathians in the wildlife and traffic in the Carpathians. This is a guidelines on how to minimize the impact of transport infrastructure development on nature in the Carpathian countries. So I think this is the core piece of our TransGREEN project. We also developed an EIA, an environmental impact assessment training package that came right on time for Ukraine and also for Romania. And we developed for the pilot areas a catalog of measures where we suggested to give recommendations how to improve the permeability of the linear transport infrastructure. These results went into the defragmentation program in the Czech Republic, and it's also, for example, in Romania, a good planning for the highway, for the new highway A8 in Romania. And we collaborated together with the Carpathian Convention, and this draft joint strategic action plan for sustainable transportation development is now up for the next COP to be adopted. So I think, yeah, there were quite some good achievements. And the project closed with a conference supported by the Romanian EU strategy on the Danube River presidency in Bucharest, with important statements from the Ministry of Transport and Environment, and the conference declaration addressing the needs and reaching out to the EU and the countries involved in the project. Then I will try to quickly also talk about SafeGREEN. SafeGREEN, you can see here, this is the output of our visualization exercise during the kickoff meeting. Here you can find all the information about SafeGREEN. So the title is Safeguarding the Functionality of Transnationally Important Ecological Corridors in the Danube Basin. And what we would like to do within this project is to improve structural and functional ecological connectivity in bottleneck areas by adapting land use and management in the surroundings, involving stakeholders from different fields of experience in Austria, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine. Our objectives are to increase knowledge and experience among relevant authorities and key stakeholders related to the topic. We would like to also increase cross-sectoral practices, or to improve them, which are relevant to green infrastructure for integrated mitigation measures, implementation and monitoring. We would like to involve here the agricultural, forestry, water and protected area sectors, as well as transport and spatial planning. And we have also a focus on the international and national governance framework that we would like to strengthen by cooperation and developing recommendations for them. We have 13 project partners. These are 8 NGOs, 3 research institutions, 1 environmental authority, and 1 company. We are associated by strategic partners. We are supported by strategic partners from even more countries. Among them are 10 ministries, 3 environmental local authorities, 1 national park, 4 road and forest companies, 1 research institution, and 1 international network, which is IENE. The pilot areas were a bit extended in comparison to the other project, SafeGREEN, TransGREEN and ConnectGREEN. So we have 2 more project areas in Austria and 1 more in Bulgaria. Then the target groups, we would like to reach out to the public authorities at the local, regional and national level. We are working together with the sectoral agencies, infrastructure and public service providers, the interest groups like NGOs or hunters or foresters, and of course the general public that needs to be made aware of the problems. Our expected outputs are a standardized methodology for monitoring the structural and functional connectivity with an application toolbox for fieldwork and analysis. We would like for each of the pilot areas to create a local cross-sectoral operational plan in cooperation with the local stakeholders and other key stakeholders also from the national level. We would like to offer international on-site workshops to really be on ground, to see the problematic and to discuss the real problems on the ground to develop solutions for these cross-sectoral operational plans and to exchange experience in the pilot areas. Then furthermore, a capacity building program will be developed for authorities and key stakeholders. This capacity building program will deal with cost-benefit analysis of environmental externalities, with strategic environment assessments and environment impact assessments and so on. And we would like to have trainings at the national level in our project countries. At the policy level, we would like to get engaged in the EU SDR policy development for maintaining and restoring green infrastructure with a focus on spatial planning. Here we are reaching out also to the Carpathian Convention, and we would like to develop recommendations towards the integration of mitigation measures into the national and EU level policy processes, meaning that we that we provide information recommendations for the integration of green infrastructure funding measures. And all in all, in the end, we would like to disseminate what we have learned and what we have done in this international conference in coordination with the IENE, which is a network of experts dealing with road ecology. This conference will be held towards the end of our project in 2022. We are reaching, yeah, okay. We are reaching out for synergies, as you can see, with Centralparks and ConnectGREEN, of course, with Horizon 2020 Basin and so on. And yeah, thank you for your interest and attention, and keep in touch. Thank you.
And thank you, Hildegard, for conveying so much information within this tight time framework. It's now time to move over to the last speaker of this webinar for today. This is another WWF colleague of mine, Rosalina Stojeva, working for the Bulgarian office. Rosalina studied international law at the University of Kent, but also international relations, and has developed into an expert also in the fields of communication and project management. And she just recently started managing the New Life Swipe project on combating wildlife crime. Please, Rosalina, give us an overview. What is planned and what we hope to achieve?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to present our brand new project that just started this month. So the project, we call it shortly SWIPE, but that stands for Successful Wildlife Crime Prosecution in Europe. This project is very special because, as you can see here in my first slide, the territorial scope is very vast. So we cover Romania, Serbia, Slovakia, Hungary, Ukraine, and Poland, but we also will have project activities in Bulgaria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Spain, and Italy. So the official start was beginning of this month, and the project is expected to end of August 2023. Leading partner is WWF Bulgaria, and we are going to deliver the project in partnership with 12 other organizations and institutions ranging from other WWF offices in Europe, in the EU and non-EU countries, as well as the State Attorney's Office in Croatia, another key organization in conservation, Flora and Fauna International, and we also have the Judicial Academy in Croatia. Talking about, so obviously in the center of this project is wildlife crime, and talking about wildlife crime, that ranges widely from country to country, and it ranges in terms of from illicit exploitation of natural resources to subsequent acts such as trafficking, trade, possession, consumption, and it is also linked to concealment, laundering of financial benefits, corruption, and document fraud. So we are talking about a very complex sequence of crimes that obviously links to international organized crime. What we identified throughout the development of the project is that actually, while some crimes take place in the country of origins, the majority of the other crimes defined as wildlife crimes occur in other countries where flora and fauna specimens and their parts are smuggled, and they travel throughout the entire Carpathian region, but also outside. So this is becoming quite a complex issue. There is in the Carpathian region, there is a very comprehensive regulatory framework on the illegal wildlife trade and its enforcement and national responsibilities unfortunately varies greatly from country to country. These inadequate levels of environment compliance assurance, particularly in regard to effective sanctioning, made wildlife crime very attractive, very tempting, where the investment is very low, but the profit is very much, it can go as high as of trading trucks and even higher than that. Throughout the development of the proposal, we did a great brainstorming, which you can see on this slide, where we talked a little bit about all the contributing factors and the drivers, the threat, and the conservation targets. It is obvious that we, within one project, we can't really focus on all of them. So that's why we decided we will go for, we will particularly focus on the lack of awareness among all actors about the seriousness and impact of wildlife crime. We will also focus on the gaps in data availability and sharing, and we will focus on lack of cooperation among national authorities, not just between different member states and non-member states of the EU, but also within one country only. The extent of wildlife crime, however, remains unknown, with many cases that are undetected, unreported, or not compliant systematically. In the different member states, they are defined by different laws. Very often they fall as admin laws, so that hampers cooperation between the relevant institutions and leads to the widespread assumption in the judiciary chain that this is crime of low priority, while actually wildlife crime cases, severe impact is considerably underestimated. So here we have the key areas. So what are actually the challenges in the Carpathians? As I said, gaps in data availability and sharing, and due to its nature, it remains unknown. Often information is split between the different national authorities responsible, for example, fishing or hunting, or various police forces, or various regions in the country, and then regional institutional units, veterinary inspections, or customs. And many countries in Eastern Europe show a low level of engagement in available EU-wide databases, for example, the grey databases such as EU Twigs or the MPES case law database, and that hampers cooperation, learning, risk assessment, and improved enforcement. Therefore, the project concentrates its efforts on cases in EU member states with considerable gaps in wildlife crime prosecution, such as Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia, and those with good practices to share in Italy and Spain, for example, as well as with Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia, countries that are an important source and transit points for traffic wildlife crime, wildlife and host populations of protected species that expand across the Carpathian region, but also the EU borders. Southern and Eastern EU member states are also relatively under-resourced, and data on seizures indicate low levels of reporting for that reason, and that leads to low engagement. Within our project, we identified three main issues, and we linked our project actions to those issues. So I will recapture this. So we have data availability and sharing. We have knowledge and capacity, and also focus on cooperation between. The sequence of actions cross-cutting, and they're very complex, focusing on not only working with each region separately, but actively exchanging information and getting that information not just out to the target groups identified by the project, but also to the general public. So informing European citizens and the citizens of the Carpathian region about really what's going on and how that impacts them as individuals. The purpose behind this is that then people can put pressure on the respective institutions and can actually initiate real changes. The overall expected result, so we are hoping to achieve by the end of the project, is that we have the number of investigated and reported wildlife crime cases proceeding to trial, and I'd like to highlight this, proceeding to trial, to increase by at least 25% in the project countries, and that to be due to improved expertise of prosecutors, investigators, and experts in law, in environmental law and conservation. We have a couple of other expected results that feed into the overall one, such as getting commitment from the prosecutors chain, getting collecting, analyzing, and presenting valuable data that is then used to feed into policy actions, getting quite practical technical tools available to professionals, informing, training prosecutors, but also informing citizens in Europe. And of course, we have an overall objective on delivering a good project that is then replicated and benefiting the region. We have envisioned a few EU and global level implications, policy implications, contribution to the implementation of international conventions such as CITES, the Berne Convention, EU directives and action plans, and the EU Green Deal. We hope that we'll get several EU policy revised against wildlife trafficking, the 2030 EU biodiversity strategy. We hope to national and the European reports we are going to produce as a result of the data collection to initiate all the conversations and to feed into the other instruments that are being developed by the project partners. We hope to establish an online information portal that will enable further collection of wildlife crime data, and of course supporting the 7th Environment Action Programme of the European Commission. At global level, we focus to contribute to the EU resolution tackling the illicit trafficking in wildlife, and also the 2018 London Declaration. I hope that although this is quite condensed information and it's a lot of information, I hope you found this presentation of our starting project useful, and I'm very much looking forward. I'm sure that we'll get to cooperate with quite a few on the call today in the months to come as part of our project activities.
Thank you very much, Rosalina, for this excellent overview over this new project. You might also have remembered the slide that Harald Igera showed in the beginning, that the Carpathian Convention led actually an initiative to research sort of the background, the root causes, and solutions for environmental crime in the region, and this served as a very important input to developing this SWIPE project. Right, so we now have a quarter of an hour left for questions and some concluding remarks. Hannah, and also many thanks for that, of the Wilderness Society has collected questions that so far have been answered directly. So anybody please come forward with additional questions that you have to the speakers. And I would suggest feel free to just speak up, as we, as I said, have nothing in the chat box at the moment. If maybe colleagues need a bit more time to think of questions, I would have one to Harald. And that is, how will these different project initiatives feed into Carpathian Convention policies or UN policies or EU policies?
Thank you very much, Irene, for that question. Well, happy to report that we have upcoming our next meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Carpathian Convention. That will be held in an online format. And there will be a lot of different inputs considered by the parties that we have been receiving from the various projects. So I think it's really enriching what we have been getting. Just to mention the transport strategic action plan, for example, or the large carnivore action plan. I think that the work on the connectivity area is still ongoing. In the same time, in UNEP, we are working on linking up with the discussions of the global post-2020 biodiversity framework, where we basically are looking at, I mean, now everything is postponed to this COVID thing, but the consultations are ongoing, and I think that certain things like the coverage of protected areas, or also the discussions about connectivity as a global indicator for biodiversity are something that we should follow from our region. And I think that the Carpathian region can also be presented. You know, we have our challenges and we have our problems, but we have also some good successes that we can show and that we can also showcase in the global fora, I believe. And at the same moment, we are also very much looking at what is going on with the European Union. And because we are basically part of it and its neighborhood, there is going to be, due to the COVID crisis and the fact that our COP is going to be online, there will be a high-level political meeting scheduled now for 2021 in Poland that will basically compensate for the political high-level part of the COP that we are going to miss in this online, more technical thing. And there is going to be a lot of discussions, and there it's really about the European dimension, about how do we basically contribute to an EU biodiversity strategy, for example. So I think that our contributions to the European framework are important. And at the same time, we are also going to discuss the developments in the macro-regional strategies. So we are, I think, Carpathian region is an important player in the EU discussions about the macro-regional strategies integrated into other strategies, or, you know, cooperating with strategies, and also certain developments and initiatives taken by some of the member states of the Carpathian Convention. And last not least, the consultations on a future accession of the European Union to the Carpathian Convention. That is also something that we are basically promoting, and that would basically somehow formalize and all our contributions in this framework. So that's in a nutshell. It was long, but in a nutshell. Thank you, Irene.
Many thanks. And I'm afraid I have to keep you on the spot, Harald, because there was another question that just came in to you. It is from Zoltan Kuhn. Is there any potential project in the pipeline in relation to the impact of climate change on natural values in the Carpathians, linked to the ongoing consultation about draft long-term vision 2030 towards combating climate change in the Carpathians?
So can you repeat the first part of the question, please? There was some noise.
Sure. Is there any potential project in the pipeline in relation to the impact of climate change on natural values in the Carpathians?
We are now preparing a roadmap for implementing Article 12 bis on climate change in the Carpathians. That has several different aspects. I think something that we would like to look at in particular is the impact of climate change on Carpathian ecosystems, and there again on the forestry, maybe agricultural sector. So our next step in this will be that we are trying to initiate a cooperation with the scientists to put together a kind of assessment on that.
Thank you. And we got now another question coming that just came in. We hear about large-scale illegal logging, even in national parks in the Carpathians in Romania, with threats to the lives of forest rangers and forest protectors. How serious is this, and is it still ongoing? Maybe I can start answering this, but any other colleagues on this call would like to add, please afterwards. So indeed, illegal logging is a serious problem, not only in Romania, but across the Carpathian mountain range. But in addition, it's also legal exploitative forms of logging that are a similar problem, I would say, and potentially a growing one, driven among others by the European Union biomass targets. So that is an issue and it needs better solutions. WWF is working on it. Other NGOs are working on it to make the wood trade and logging in general better traceable, more transparent, so that it is easier to uncover and prosecute such crime. There's anybody else who would like to add to this? If not, any other questions to the speakers? Or something you would like to raise? Doesn't seem to be the case, so maybe then it's time for some concluding remarks or a short summary. So
sorry to jump in, but there is another question from Ivan. Just came in.
Sorry, I will look at this. From Ivan. Okay, thank you for an interesting presentations and for trying to involve Ukraine in EU projects. My question is there any project about implementing the Sustainable Development Goals in the Carpathian region? Maybe Harald has the best overview over that.
Yeah, let me maybe comment that I think first of all, the Carbasian Convention, even though it was adopted a long time before the SDGs were adopted as such, and in its multi-sectoral nature, is basically a tool for achieving SDGs, because and we made some assessment, so it's matching. And what we would like to do is, and that is basically a plan, and that will come soon, is that we really make material showing that in all the local languages of the Carpathians and try to disseminate them to all the stakeholders linked to the SDGs and the Carpathian Convention.
Thank you. I guess this was now the last question. So let me then come to the concluding remarks. So what we learned today is to appreciate the incredible wealth of biodiversity that fortunately still is left in the Carpathian mountain range, a wealth that is threatened in particular from fragmentation, stemming from development projects that are not based on sufficient data and the willingness to integrate biodiversity objectives. It is also threatened by illegal activities, be it illegal logging or wildlife crime, and by various types of unsustainable natural resource management. And the Carpathian Convention, together with the EU SDR, but also the European Union and UN framework, is providing a policy framework for tackling these challenges. And we zoomed in on 4 projects that provide very concrete contributions to reducing the threat, and all aiming at giving nature more space and ensuring that nature maintains or regains coherence. These different projects come from different angles. One focusing on connecting protected areas, the other one on integrating linear transport planning with ecological corridor planning, another one on managing natural areas in bottleneck areas, and last but not least, on also integrating cultural, socioeconomic needs with biodiversity conservation. And one project then not only on the Carpathian, focusing on the Carpathians, but also making best use of the knowledge of other countries on how to improve the prosecution of wildlife crime. The common thread to these projects is stakeholder involvement. It's also building knowledge among stakeholders. Proper planning is also one of these common themes, and also interdisciplinary work, the cooperation of different sectors, but also cooperation across governmental, non-governmental actors and science. All that is embedded in global initiatives. Biodiversity is the theme globally. Everybody is now looking towards these global decisions that will be taken beginning of next year in the framework of the Convention on Biological Diversity, but also the European Union has geared up to the topic. Biodiversity conservation is a very important element of the European Green Deal. Closest to home is the Carpathian Convention Conference of the Parties that is coming up, and that will discuss and decides on some very important policy frameworks that will help maintaining the beautiful nature that we have here around us, but also in Europe and globally. Well, let me then give another thank to all the speakers, and again to Hannah working so beautifully in the background on the technical aspects. Many thanks to also the audience for giving your time and your attention, and yeah, wishing you a good day.
Sorry, Irene.
Yes.
Just to stress some comments just arrived, and yeah, I completely agree that agriculture and biodiversity is really a hot theme, and we are basically work on it on different projects. And yeah, I just suggested to take note of our presentation when we are in position to share all the presentations, and let's keep in contact. I think that with this webinar, it's also tough to really put all together in a big network, because I think that cooperation is central, especially within the Carpathian area. So maybe we can also understand what are the main topics we are facing together with the other speakers, with the other projects, and together with the Carpathian Convention.